before leaving for the US. The Prime Minister said, and I quote, "The occasion is going to strengthen India's strategic partnership with the US, and India will consolidate ties with Japan and Australia." He also tweeted about his visit, saying India will continue dialogue and exchange views on areas of mutual interest and discuss global issues and explore ideas for cooperation between India and the United States. Let's give you a quick roundup of how the coming days are going to look like. On Thursday, he has crucial bilateral meetings scheduled with Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga and Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison. He is also going to sit down with US Vice President Kamala Harris. This is in the backdrop of the AUKUS Pact, which has miffed the European Union. On Friday, he will be in a crucial day, or will be a crucial day for the Prime Minister and India's strategic relationship with the US Prime Minister. Modi is going to hold a bilateral meeting with US President Joe Biden. Sources say that Afghanistan and issues related to South Asia will be discussed during the meeting. This will be Prime Minister Modi's first in-person meeting with Biden after the US President took office in January. The two have interacted several times virtually and over a phone call, but this is their first face-to-face meeting since Biden won the presidential elections. Later that day, Prime Minister Modi will take part in the Quad's first in-person summit. The quadrilateral security dialogue partnership includes India, the United States, Australia and Japan. The leaders are set to review the progress made in the first virtual summit held in March this year. Sources say that the Quad conversation will revolve around a number of issues of common interest. Discussions on China could be a priority, and this is also according to sources. In New York, the Prime Minister will be addressing the general debate, which will cover a range of issues from reinforcing strategic partnerships, recovery from COVID-19 pandemic, rebuilding sustainability, climate crisis, curbing extremism and cross-border terror to revitalizing the United Nations. Well, for more on this, we are joined by Arun Singh, who is a member of the National Security Advisory Board. He has also served as the Indian ambassador to the United States. Thank you very much for joining us at this hour. With focus on the Indo-Pacific and bolstering ties among Asian countries with the West, what is India expected to gain after the Quad Summit and the UN General Assembly?
I think this is an important visit for the Prime Minister to the US, because this is going to be his first face-to-face encounter with the new US President Joe Biden, who took over in January. They have spoken on the phone several times, and they've had a virtual summit of the Quad in March. But this is the first time that there's going to be a White House in-person meeting. So that's important to maintain that level of contact. And clearly another focus for the discussion is the Quad, which has gained quite a bit of salience because, for example, when Joe Biden was campaigning for president, a lot of people were raising issues whether he would advance the process of cooperation in the framework of Indo-Pacific, which had gained some prominence during the Trump administration. But not only has he sustained that, he has sort of taken it further by raising the meetings to summit level and coming out with concrete outcomes. And from the comments that you see, clearly for the Quad partners, one thing they want to see is how do each one of them benefit from this partnership in terms of the cooperation, in terms of supply chain resilience, in terms of cooperation for new and emerging technologies. How does each one of them benefit? And the second thing is, how do other countries benefit from the Quad partnership? And I think that's been a very deliberate message, because some of the countries that are opposed to the Quad have been trying to send negative messages regarding what the Quad is all about, as if it is a military alliance, which it is not. And that's why in the last virtual summit that was held in March, among the concrete decisions were that 1 billion vaccines would be made available related to COVID by the end of 2022 to the countries in the Asian region. Also that they would partner in new and emerging technologies, and that they would work on climate change related to technologies and financing. So there's a very deliberate message that this is a partnership that benefits not only the members but others. And I think it is in that framework that the Quad will meet tomorrow in the US at the summit level. to see what are the newer areas of cooperation that can be activated. Because, India's position has been that Quad is a partnership not just focusing on the Indo-Pacific or the Asia-Pacific region, but it's a partnership in terms of the global challenges that everyone is facing. So I think that's how they will be approaching it.
Mr. Singh, there is worry that with China and Pakistan causing up to the Taliban government, it could destabilize India's security status. Do you think this concern could be included as a point of discussion in the Quad by Prime Minister Modi?
I think many countries would certainly be raising the issue that with the US now having withdrawn from Afghanistan and the kind of Taliban structure that has come into power in Kabul or gained presence in Kabul through force, many would argue that perhaps it is even worse than the government that was there in the late 1990s, because you have specifically designated, internationally designated terrorist elements who are an integral part of this government. And the US intelligence community has reported, the UN reports have said that the new Taliban elements have, many of them holdovers from the past, have not really broken off their links with Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. So there will certainly be a concern that with their presence now in Kabul and other parts of Afghanistan, what is the kind of support that terrorist groups will now continue to get or get in a more intensified form, which could be a challenge to countries in Central Asia, could be a challenge to ethnic groups within Afghanistan. It could be a challenge also to Western countries, and certainly it can also be a challenge to India. So I think everybody will be discussing it from their perspective. But as far as India is concerned, certainly it will be a challenge, but it's a challenge India has addressed in the past, and I'm sure if it comes to that, India would be able to handle it effectively if there is a new challenge for India emanating from Afghanistan.
Indeed, let's talk more about that. Stemming radicalism, extremism, cross-border terrorism and dismantling of global terrorist networks. These are some of the topics Prime Minister Modi is set to discuss at the Quad. All this shows India's willingness to take a strong stand against terrorism. What impact will this have in the region?
I think everybody will be looking at the issue from their perspective. I think everybody recognizes the problem that Pakistan is, how Pakistan has nurtured terrorist groups. In fact, I remember way back in September 2011, the then chairman of US Joint Chiefs of Staff had said that the Haqqani network is a veritable strategic arm of Pakistan's inter-services intelligence. So they recognize the problem that is there. It's just unfortunate that because of the difficulties that the US and the West have in their relations with Iran, the only way they can effectively try and reach Afghanistan for any counter-terrorism action or getting some intelligence on the ground is through Pakistan. So that's a constraint that they have. And I think many of them also have some concerns of whether the Pashtun factor in Afghanistan leads to blowback in Pakistan and whether that can destabilize Pakistan with all its nuclear weapons. So because of these concerns, they tend to handle Pakistan with some kid gloves, despite knowing of Pakistan's full involvement with terrorism and terrorist groups. So I think clearly the Indian interlocutors, the Prime Minister and others, the External Affairs Minister is there, in their meetings will be certainly drawing attention also to the challenge that terrorism located in the Afghanistan-Pakistan region, with which the Pakistani state has been integrally involved, will pose to societies everywhere. And you can see that even in Central Asia, Russia, Iran, there are certainly concerns related to this with the new situation that has emerged after the middle of August.
Mr. Arun Singh, thank you very much for your insights and for talking to WION.
Thank you.